longer we spend doing something, the more ingrained in the way we do it we become, and the less open to change. And so this is what this conversation in today is going to be about, is getting you to look at what's evolving and the role we play in change. So I'm going to talk about really 4 topics. The first one is disruption. We'll do some definitions and some examples of what disruption looks like. We're going to talk about innovation and its role in disruption, talk about change, and then the last is really around resilience. And this idea of what can I do to not be a victim of change, but be a driver of it. So let's start off with disruption. Pretty common buzzword today. In the past it used to be synergy. Today disruption is in every magazine, newspaper, online journal, and it's this idea of an interruption of the normal course. We were doing things one way and then something disrupted. Something changed the course of action, and all of a sudden we have to react, and we have to change. 2005, the Pope inauguration. I see one flip phone in the front of that. And then again in 2013, a sea of phones. How many of you remember going to concerts where everyone pulled their lighters out and salute the band? Today you go to a concert and everyone pulls their phone out. Artificial light. So things are changing really rapidly. When I started and I was at the Roadrunner office, I remember an executive making this comment. I don't want that data crap running across our cable lines. There was a concern that it would degrade the picture quality of that tube TV that was like 480i, right? And look at where we are today and how important high-speed data is to the industry. And so it's that we're not a monopoly, that's not a telephone pole, I don't want that data crap. It's being stuck in the paradigm you're in becomes a dangerous place to live, and we have to open our eyes to the future. So at a leadership offsite meeting in 2005, I was being provocative and I posed this question. I said, imagine a day when the cable company only provides a pipe into households and all the services are independent of that service provider. Interesting concept. Don't think it's going to happen. And that was the feedback at the time. And I wasn't trying to, I didn't have the answer. It was just one of those things that we were starting to see changes already. And when you fast forward to where we are today, those changes are a reality. Who or what killed Blockbuster Video? I still remember Friday evenings, my wife and I would love to go to Blockbuster Video and roam the aisles trying to figure out which VHS tape to get, and then which DVD to get. Just look at this path from the battle over VHS versus Betamax to Blockbuster to TiVo being killed by the DVR, to Netflix mailing DVDs out to your home, keeping the post office in business, to Redbox, to where we are today with the number of streaming services. Not a long time, but an iterative process. What's most interesting to me about this process is this idea of the incumbent. The incumbent is the one that's most at risk, and the disruptor usually comes from the outside. Netflix did something really interesting that not a lot of companies have done. They recognized that the future was not going to be in mailing DVDs, but in streaming. And what did they do? They cannibalized their own business and they placed a big bet on streaming video. And as a result, they actually in the short term hurt their business, but in the long term created a much brighter future. And if you look at the valuation of Netflix today because of what they did. So something to think about. How many companies can you think of that actually disrupted themselves? That went out there and said, hey, we see where the ball was going to be. Wayne Gretzky, famous quote, I don't skate to where the puck is, I skate to where it's going to be. And have this vision of where things are going to be and place some bets. So disruption's not easy. And when you look at it, it's not just being disruptive because you're the incumbent, but it's also the disruptors don't have it easy either. And here's 3 examples. One of them happens to be a company I run, but if we start off with the idea of, imagine selling shoes on the internet. Sounds like the dumbest idea in the world. How do you buy shoes without trying them on? Well, Zappos created a pretty successful business doing that to the point that they sold it for millions of dollars to Amazon. And it works. Why do I need to pull out an app to call a taxi when I could just raise my hand on a street corner? Uber's done pretty well for themselves. I run a program called LeaderSurf that involves teaching people to be better leaders by teaching them how to surf. People think I'm crazy. Had a number of pretty interesting and high-profile companies that have sent people on a program. I have MetLife coming to a program in June. However, I'm still at that early phase where people think I'm crazy. And so disruption requires a leap of faith. And so the bigger companies have trouble with this idea of taking risks, whereas small companies are much more interested and willing to take risks and bet it all. Disruption equals change, and you have to look at what's my role in change, right? And so there's a number of ways that you can adapt to change or be involved. You can be a driver of change. You can be a willing participant in it. You can be an agent of it, or you can be a resistor. And if you're a resistor, you're going to be pretty short-lived. And so the idea is, how do I either be a driver or at least a willing participant in the changes that are coming? And to do that, I think we have to understand the why behind change. So as a quick activity, I'm going to ask everybody to fold your hands. And what I want you to notice is which finger is on top. And I didn't tell you why I wanted you to do it. And so some of you are like, this is kind of dumb. I wish I knew why I was doing this. Now I'm going to tell you why. It's because I'm going to show you something about moving out of your comfort zone. I'd like you to unfold your hands and fold them again, now with the opposite thumb on top. We can all do it, but there's a natural way that we're going to fold our hands, and that's our comfort zone. And change requires pushing outside your comfort zone, and it's awkward. But if you did it consciously enough, it becomes second nature. And so change is about adapting to something that is not natural for us, but over time becomes natural. Understanding the why of change is the number one principle when doing change management training. It's all about communication and getting people, most importantly, to understand the WIFM. The WIFM is what's in it for me. If there isn't a reason that this is going to impact me in a good way, I don't want to do it. And you have to sometimes search long and hard to find out what is that. What is in it for me? Why is this the right thing? And it may not be a positive, it may be a survival instinct. But it's important to know what the why is and where it fits in. You have the people that are pushing the change, driving the change. For them, there's lower risk involved because they're the ones that are making it and initiating it. The people on the other side of this hill are the ones that are going to have to react to the change. And so the more you can drive the change by being upfront and transparent about what it is that you're going to accomplish and why you're doing it, the more the people that are downstream from you are going to be prepared to adapt, adjust, and get on board with it. Change isn't easy. Even in nature, it's kind of an ugly process. So you think about a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. In between the caterpillar and a butterfly, there's this sticky, gooey mess that they go through. Famous change author named William Bridges, and he talks about beginnings, middles, and ends. And the hardest part of change is the middle. It's what goes on when you've got to let go of the old and embrace the new. I say be like Tarzan. So think about Tarzan, right? He's trying to cruise through the jungle. And Tarzan starts by swinging out on a vine. But when he swings out on that vine, he doesn't know where the next vine's going to be necessarily. So he's got to grab for whatever's right in front of him, with the hope and the courage that that next vine is going to lead to yet another vine that's going to lead to another vine. We don't know what our path is, and the change path isn't usually linear. The thing that I like the most about the image of Tarzan is what happens if Tarzan forgets or refuses to let go of the old as he embraces the new. It's pulled in two different directions, and when you're pulled in two different directions, you fall. So the big thing to think about when dealing with change is that we have to let go of the old and embrace the new, and that you can't be stuck in between. Resistors become irrelevant. If you resist change, an organization doesn't have room for you. And so you have to find a way to keep yourself relevant, and that means embracing the change. Now, for an organization, if leadership resists change, the implications are even greater and worse for the organization. It leads to complacency, and you can be lulled into believing that and you'll survive by continuing to do what got you there. Famous kind of parable of boiling a frog. You take a frog and you take a pot of boiling hot water and throw a frog into the pot of water, the frog will jump out immediately. The shock of the hot water makes him jump. You take a pot of room temperature lukewarm water and put a frog in it, and then slowly turn up the heat, the frog will fall asleep, and you'll boil the frog. And that's what happens to so many companies and industries that don't see change coming. In the end, it boils down to the fact that, as this famous economist Peter Drucker once said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. You have to have a culture that adjusts and adapts to change and embraces it. Otherwise, even the best strategy isn't going to be executed. You have to have this I can do it attitude. This attitude that says I can overcome. The famous quote by Charles de Gaulle, who was the former mayor of Paris, and the airport there is named after him, which is that graveyards are filled with indispensable men. I like this version of it, which is the graveyards are filled with companies that fail to transform. So here's a tombstone, and here's a handful of companies. I bet each of you could name several other companies who have tombstones that we grew up with that failed to innovate or failed to keep up with the pace of change, and as a result, they became irrelevant and are no longer here. And it's a question that I ask in a number of workshops that I do with different companies, which is, what if we put your company name on the tombstone and said, here lies XYZ company, the dates, maybe give them a few more years, and say, what would they say is the reason that your company died if it were to die in the next 5 years? And what are you doing to make sure that that doesn't happen? It's a provocative question, but it's a real one that I think every company needs to be asking itself. Resistance, resilience, and adaptability, three important terms. The first one, this idea about resistance. Resistance to change is the action taken by somebody where they're saying, I see change as a threat, and I refuse. I'm not going to change. I'm going to stay the way I am. It's gotten me this far. I've been successful because of that. Resilience is that capacity to adapt from a negative change and to bounce back. And the last then is this adaptability. It's the ability to change or be changed to fit into a situation. In doing that proactively versus reactively. Resilience oftentimes is a reactive state.